I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, I'm Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, and welcome to this week's episode of Restore Freedom Weekly. Of course, right off the bat, we're going to have some technical issues, so I'm going to check in. Lori and Mike, does it look like it's lagging to you guys, or does it look like it's okay on your end?
No, it seems to be good here. The screen did move up for some reason after the intro, but I can still see half of our faces.
Yeah,
the worst part of my face here.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully it's okay for all of the rest of you as well that might be watching us live or watching us later. Rachel, hello. Rachel Atwood from Jenison, Michigan is joining us today. She's a fellow freedom fighter. And who knows, maybe we should, Rachel, if you're able to stick around and listen to the full episode today, we'd love to get your input on some of the topics that we'll be talking about. So without any further ado, what I would like to do today is, first of all, let you know what today's topic is in case you didn't see the description. Let's see, can't stand being that big. Okay, there we go. Hi to Dominic from YouTube there. Well, actually, Houghton Lake via YouTube. And okay, so, oh, sorry, give me just a second. It looks like we got a good comment going. Rachel says, I recently saw a video of Becky Steele trashing her other Georgetown Township board members. That is definitely something we are going to talk about today. Responsibilities of local government officials and whatnot, but let's kind of reel it in and just start from the top. Again, I'm Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, and this is Restore Freedom Weekly. Today's episode is going to be on municipal government, constitutional powers and responsibilities relating to municipal government, and why you need to know about municipal governments and their powers and responsibilities. And of course, we also are going to have a conversation with a Michigan Township Trustee. And those of you in other parts of the country that might not call it that, it would be maybe just a township board member, or it's akin to a city council member. But why don't we go ahead and get started. So with me today, and I'm going to go ahead and, I'm not sure how I could do that. Dang it, I was going to make your screen big, but I don't know. Oh, I can. Okay, finally figured it out. All right, so with me today in Georgetown Township in Michigan is Michael Bosch, and he is currently a Georgetown Township treasurer. That's right, not just a regular board member, but one of those special ones that I did forget to mention in our description. But so Michael, are you here with us today?
Yep.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right, and it looks like in Michigan it's pretending to be as warm as Florida, based on the background there.
Yeah, it's pretty toasty out here. I mean, you should probably see what the actual temperature is. 85.
85. Yesterday, I took my son and Emma to the ocean, and my son and I were talking, and he didn't think it was all that hot out. And I said, Alex, it's 92 degrees out right now, and it says the heat index is 102. And he's like, nah, it feels like more like 91 to me. I was like, okay. 18-year-olds, I guess. I don't know. Man, today there is just so much information. I'm just trying to calm my mind down to see where we can get started. But basically, I think what I want to do is kind of give you guys that that frame of reference of local municipal governments, what their powers are, what their responsibilities are, where that source of authority comes from, get into a little bit more specifics, and then jump right on into some great local examples from Georgetown Township, and get to know one of their board members, and probably a future one, maybe, if Rachel sticks around long enough that she can keep the conversation going when it comes to Georgetown Township issues. But so to get us started in this conversation, talking about municipal governments, and I'm going to give you the sneak peek at what next week's topic is. But next week's topic is actually going to be about county governments and their constitutional powers and responsibilities. And I'm very excited to announce that we will have a fantastic conversation with a county commission candidate from, actually, I was going to say he's also from Georgetown Township, but I believe he's from Blendon Township. But that is from the West Michigan area in Ottawa County. And I look forward to that conversation as well. But to get us started with today, talking about municipal governments, there's a lot of, how do I say this? So every time I talk about really any of these issues, whether we're talking about abortion issues, whether we're talking about, Second Amendment issues, or, gay marriage issues, what are some of the other topics? Oh, man, there's so many. Voting, or any kinds of laws or regulations, anything where the people are being regulated basically in any way, shape, or form. You have, well, of course, you have on the far left, my right, your left, over here, you have, people that really love big government for some reason. And we're not even going to try to, bridge any gaps during this conversation with that kind of philosophy. You have a lot of people that are middle of the road, so to speak. I think more often than not, it's because they really haven't thought about the issues that much in depth, because you're kind of, some of these issues are, well, you're either okay with murdering babies or you're not. You're one or the other. It's you can't really kind of say, well, I'm just going to stay in the middle and be okay with both sides. A lot of those issues, though, I think people, they avoid politics, they avoid anything to do with law. They don't want things that are complicated or, going to create problems in their circle of friends or within their families. So they avoid some of those tougher issues to think about and talk about, especially in their faith communities, in their church, in their congregation or whatnot. Those are the very areas that we need to be talking about these issues, especially the ones that are the hot button issues. But anyway, when you have people, again, you have people that are left, you have people that are center or maybe undecided, then you have people that are in the conservative camp, so to speak. People that, might call themselves Republicans or libertarians, people who, believe in the rule of law and the Constitution. So there are, several big factions, if you will, within that movement. So what has really surprised me is the number of people that, let's just say since COVID started. So the last 2.5 years, since I've been speaking in public on these issues and doing these videos and all that other stuff, which I'm obviously still not that great at. So you guys will give me some grace about all the technical issues I have. But anyway, since I started doing this work, I've been shocked at the number of people that will hear me do a speech on the Constitution or on the limited powers of government or on our God-given liberties or something, to do with any of those topics. I'll come down off the stage and they'll come up to me and say, hey, that was a great speech, but, what about that original 13th Amendment or, cities and counties, government in general, it's all a corporation. The United States is a corporation and we're all, subjects to this corporation, or it's usually the same people that share the notion that all bar attorneys are, have an allegiance to the Crown of England and, common law all the way. It's common law that's good and it's going to save us all. Those are a lot of similar types of concepts Well, same thing, states' rights, the same people that typically talk about states' rights, or that all of these big issues are things that should be handled at the local government level, that local government is where these laws or these rules or these regulations should be made. For example, with the masks and quarantining, or whether schools should be open or closed or whatever. We have a lot of people that have been arguing on the conservative side, hey, this is something that needs to be done at the local level, not at a state level or not at a national level. What's good for New York City is not necessarily good for a city that's 3 hours away, but still in New York, for example. What's good for Minneapolis, St. Paul is not necessarily the same that's good for Marshall, Minnesota. Or, what's good for Hancock, Michigan, where I was born, is oftentimes quite a bit different than what is good for the people of Detroit. It's just a totally different landscape, totally different makeup of people and geography, topography. Everything is really just different. They both get snow. They both are stuck with Whitmer right now. But aside from that, there's a lot of differences. So a lot of people are arguing for more of local government should be the place where all these big decisions are really made. Now, I'm going to probably tick off quite a few of you today, because I'm going to say to all of those topics, it's all wrong. And I'd love to say it some other more eloquent, less offensive way, but I don't want to have this show take 3 hours today. So I'm going to just cut to the chase, and I'm going to say that's all wrong. First of all, there are no states' rights. We did a whole episode on that, and we can revisit that later if people still have questions on that. And we did a whole episode. I've done a few long videos on the whole concept that attorneys have some sort of oath to or allegiance to the Crown of England. That's BS. I have no allegiance to anything to do with England. In fact, let's bring us back to common law for a brief second here. Should common law be the thing that saves the day, or the thing that we rely on, or that we turn to? No, because not only is common law literally judge-made law, it's law that comes out of case precedent, but so it's done in offense to or in direct contradiction with the concept of separation of powers. But the original common law, when we came, when the United States, before there were states and there were colonies, and there were, their local governments being set up, and as we turned into, the United States, and states were receiving statehood, I guess you could say, as all those things were happening, common law, think about it, the majority of common law was the body of judge-made law that came over from England. So it's mind-blowing to me that the very same people that often argue that all bar attorneys in the U.S. have this allegiance to England, and so they're all awful people and they don't do anything for we the people. Most bar attorneys are crap, but that's not the reason why. So while you have people that argue that, it's usually the same people that turn around and argue, oh, the common law is awesome. And, the common law is going to save us, and turn to the common law, and let's all educate ourselves on the common law. There's no one way to find out where the common law is or what it is on any particular subject, because it's a bunch of court decisions, a bunch of judges, which, started in, let me put it this way. When I was in law school and we're studying, say, property law, the whole concept of property ownership and everything, we were studying cases from the 1600s. The United States was not the United States in the 1600s. So where do you think those cases came from? Those were English cases. So at any rate, what we need to really bring it all back to is the true source of authority, the true source of rights and liberties of the people, and the true source of power for the people and for governments at all levels. So with that being said, I want to remind you, take a look at the U.S. Constitution Preamble, the Michigan Constitution Preamble, the Florida State Constitution Preamble, and keep in mind, at some point eventually I can do a lot of education on the constitutions of other states, but I'd probably start with Minnesota because I spent, 10 years of my life there and finished high school, college, and law school there. And that's where I was first licensed as an attorney. But Michigan, I've spent more than half my life in. And Florida, I grew up spending 12 years here. And we're back in Florida. So these are the ones I start with as examples. But if you live in another state, do listen to these examples because oftentimes you will find something very similar in your own state constitution. But if you look at the preamble of all three of those constitutions, it's talking about that, we the people, in order to secure, this is the U.S. Constitution, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Or the Michigan preamble, grateful to Almighty God for the blessings of freedom. The Florida Constitution, being grateful to Almighty God for our constitutional liberty. Again, it's not this, the separation of church and state crap that we've heard for decades does not exist. We actually get our rights from God. So there's no way to ignore God when you're looking at how government is supposed to act. So with that main point being addressed, I want to also leave you with the little nuggets, if you will, of, so we have all those God-given liberties, right? Well, the 9th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 23 of the Michigan Constitution, and I'm pretty sure, I just didn't grab it. It's also in the Florida Constitution, but I didn't write it down today. Those provisions are unenumerated clauses where we say that the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not disparage or, deny all the other rights that are given to us by God that we are keeping. So again, we don't get our rights from the government. We don't get our rights from the federal government. We don't get our rights from the state government. We don't get our rights from the county government, and we don't get our rights from the municipal government. It doesn't matter how local we make it. We still don't get our rights from them. We get our rights from God, period. And as far as, the concept of government and the government's right to do things, sometimes I do still use that in the context of, the government, like the federal government has no right to force people to wear masks. Okay, well, what I really should say is the federal government has no proper authority to try to make those regulations or restrictions on people. But I'm really not talking about a right. Why is that important? Well, there's a distinction. We just talked about the 9th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Well, everybody talks about the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and oftentimes it's talked about in terms of states' rights. Well, there's two things wrong there. Well, there's a bunch of things wrong with that. But the first part is that the 10th Amendment doesn't actually talk about rights. The 10th Amendment is all about power. So what it's referencing is all the power that's not delegated to the federal government is reserved to the state governments or to the people. And the people is left at the end there because the people is the catch-all, so to speak. So basically this part of the Constitution, the 10th Amendment, says we've given certain powers to the federal government. And then we have prohibited some powers from ever being exercised by any state government. But by implication, then there are a lot of others that they can exercise at the state government level. And then we're saying, hey, but we keep all the rest of the power that we have. Why is that important? Well, first of all, look at Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. We have a Republican form of government. We're guaranteed that Republican form of government where we elect people to do the day-to-day functions of government, but we, the people, retain ultimate control and authority. So these are very important concepts that I have done whole videos just on themselves, but they're they really need to become the starting point for every conversation. Side tangent. So Matt DePerno is the Republican nominee for Attorney General in the state of Michigan. I think he's a smart guy. I think he's a hard worker. I think he's done a lot to help especially in the elections sense. But it was pointed out to me, because I have not actually seen any debates or events where he's been answering, tough questions, but it was actually just this morning pointed out to me by someone who is a huge community activist leader, grassroots leader in Michigan, who before didn't really share my concerns, but today texted me and said, hey, yeah, I see what's going on here. Matt DePerno doesn't really answer the tough questions. I forgot what the specific question was, what the topic was. I'm not trying to pick on Matt, but my point is, whatever topic it was that was being brought up, he was deflecting and not answering the specific questions, but instead going off into some hot button topics like transgender issues or election integrity or something. Some of those big hot button things that typically get a lot of the news coverage, but he's not willing to sit down and really answer point blank the regular recurring types of questions on all other issues. Because I think there's one thing missing. I think he's like every other lawyer. He was educated in a law school where we weren't really taught these basics that I'm going over right now, that we get our God, we have God-given liberties. We don't get our rights from God. That the government has no rights at any level. No level of government has rights. The only authority or power they have is that which we give them through the Constitution. And that all laws, all government regulations whatsoever have to fit through those two concepts or they're not legit. It's really that simple, but we have allowed ourselves to be given this garbage, especially as attorneys. We've allowed ourselves to be taught, oh, no, it's more complicated than that. Oh, it's about statutes and court rules and constitutions and case law and administrative rules and regulations. And, there's all these different levels and types and kinds of courts and governments, and it's layer upon layer, but it's not that complicated. Most of that stuff that I just mentioned is totally unconstitutional. And I believe this is my soon to meet in person friend here in Volusia County, Florida, who is saying that the government sure believes it has rights. Yes, it does believe it has rights. But lucky for me, I don't think I've ever actually directly asked that question of the Georgetown Township board member and treasurer that we have on with us today. But I'm pretty sure that without ever having asked him, we are lucky to have him on board with us today because he understands. Is that my computer? Something singing at me. Oh, that's pleasant. Hopefully, do you hear that? What is that? I have nothing showing up on my screen, so this is really fantastic. Okay. Apparently, I now receive phone calls on my computer. That's news to me. Okay. At least I figured out where it was and how to hang up. At any rate, sorry about that, guys. So although a lot of this stuff is stuff that you've heard me say before, it really has to be the basis of this conversation. Because the people who think all those other things, like, for example, municipal governments or local governments are where all these regulations are supposed to be. And it's okay that local governments basically put whatever regulations in place that they want or whatever, right? That's not true. And I'm trying to explain the foundation for why. So what we need to remember, like I said, is that this is a constitutional republic. We, the people, have the ultimate control and authority here. So we can look at the 10th Amendment, like I mentioned. We can look at the Declaration of Independence. We've talked about that, that when the government abuses our rights and usurps its authority, it is our right, it is our duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for our future security. Of course, our U.S. and Michigan Constitution preambles, the Florida Constitution preambles talk about that it's we the people that are ordaining and establishing the constitutions. Both the Florida and the Michigan constitutions might even be the same part. But anyway, Michigan is Article 1, Section 1. All political power is inherent in the people. That doesn't just mean the right to vote, because that's a whole other section on elections. Literally, all political power is inherent in the people. Oh, yeah, I did have, of course, I have eating fuzz here for lunch, but yes, it is Article 1, Section 1 of the Florida Constitution. I just had my notes a little out of order here today, but one last thing, I guess, to note on that concept, what I find interesting. So a lot of you know about the Restore Freedom Initiative, the constitutional amendment petition that I drafted, and we were circulating, trying to get that 500,000 signatures while everything was shut down in the state of Michigan. And I was being violently arrested for circulating the petition, all that other fun stuff. So that one of the things in there was basically solidifying concepts of FOIA, OMA, the Freedom of Information Act, Open Meetings Act, things that basically require that openness. It's already required, but a lot of government doesn't realize that. They need it spelled out. So we were putting it in the Michigan State Constitution through this amendment that there had to be all kinds of additional things put on government websites and contact information, meeting minutes, videos of meetings, things like that. At any rate, there was going to be a lot more than what's on there right now. And the websites had to make sense on how to use them. So in other words, they can't turn into the current Secretary of State of Michigan's website where it's a bunch of garbage and you can't find anything and all the links are broken. But at any rate, if you look at and some people who are tied up in the this is just how we do it kind of mentality told me, well, those kinds of things. In fact, a senator that a lot of people think of, a former Michigan state senator who a lot of people think of as a leader in the freedom fight, told me, well, you can't do this petition because those kinds of things, the OMA, the FOIA, all those kinds of things, those belong in statutes. Those shouldn't be in the Constitution. I don't know why. He never did give me that reason why. And I vehemently disagree. But what I find is funny is that if you look at Florida, just as an example, there are other states that have this as well. But the Florida State Constitution, Article 1, Section 24, is a very long section entitled Access to Public Records and Meetings. I don't know about you, Bosch, but doesn't that sound like access to public records and meetings? Doesn't that sound like a combination of FOIA and OMA to you?
Yep.
You know, what's funny is I can hear the wind like crystal clear, but your voice kind of came in garbled there, and your
Maybe I'll try some earbuds quick, just in case. Can you hear me?
I can hear. Yeah, I can hear you. It's also, I think, might be on my end that there's a lag. I don't know. It's a little better. Okay, you look like you're blinking at a normal rate now. That's good. You had your eyes open for a really long time there for a second. So anyway, so there's just some things I want you guys to think about that we shouldn't take for granted, and we shouldn't just make assumptions about, well, it just is this way, or it's the way it's always been. No, this is not the way it's always been, and not the way it should be. It's not the way it's constitutionally set up. These are things that we need to be mindful of. So also want to kind of point out to you that the reason why all those things are important is that anyone in government must take an oath of office to support and defend the U.S. and state constitution if they're a state officer. Obviously, if you're a federal government officer, you don't have to take an oath to support the Michigan Constitution, for example. But at any rate, the oath of office stems from Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, in Florida, Article 2, Section 5B, and in, I said Article 6. Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry. And the Michigan Constitution is Article 11, Section 1, I think. I don't know why I don't have that in front of me, but anyway. It's the same thing I talked to you guys about before. And of course, the Michigan statute, there's many, but the Michigan statute, MCL 15.151, is the catch-all that basically says if you work for or volunteer for any aspect of government whatsoever, if once a year you volunteer to clean out the broom closet at the elementary school, you have to take an oath of office. That's what that statute says. Unfortunately, way too many people don't understand that. But so that's everywhere. Also interesting as an example is in the Florida Constitution, Article 2, Section 8, there's a whole section called Ethics in Government, which starts with people who are not even elected yet or appointed yet, but people who are merely candidates for a position in government, and the transparency that they have to have. I'm sorry, I'm going to see here. I have a question coming from YouTube. Let's see. So the way you're describing the U.S. Constitution, that moved. I'm assuming that you believe in the incorporation doctrine. Not actually sure what your question is there, because we're not a corporation. But maybe you flesh that out some more. I can come back to that. Okay, so all right. Also, something important is that the U.S. Constitution has an inherent separation of powers, right? Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, we have legislative, executive, and judicial powers separated. The words separation of powers don't actually appear because, well, it's common sense. But by the time our state constitutions were written, the drafters knew that a lot of common sense had gone out the window, even by that point. So they put right in there, literally, the words separation of powers. So the Michigan Constitution, Article 3, Section 2, I believe the Florida Constitution, yep, Article 2, Section 3, both of those talk about the branches of government. And I take it back. The Florida State Constitution doesn't actually use the words separation of powers. The Michigan Constitution does. But the Florida Constitution explains exactly what it means, that the powers of government are divided into the 3 branches, etc. So those concepts are important because at no level of government can you have people exercising the powers of more than one branch of government. You're either legislative, executive, or judicial. So where does that bring us from there? Well, the Michigan state government, starting with the Michigan Constitution, Article 7 of the Michigan Constitution is all about local government. That's the best starting point. In the Florida Constitution, it is Article 8, local government. There are several pieces in there. The Michigan Constitution starts with talking about counties. One thing I want to pull out from that, which I found interesting and didn't quite sink in before, but Article 7, Section 14 of the Michigan Constitution allows counties to consolidate townships. Bosch, had you ever heard of that? I never really realized that before, even though I knew it was in there.
Sorry, I had the mute on. No, I hadn't heard of that. I do know a little bit about annexation, but that's usually one township or a city annexing a neighboring village or township.
Right. So, yeah, exactly. And there's a certain process for that, and it's generally not something that's like, I don't know, forced upon the people, but there's usually a vote involved and a vote of the people involved and other things like that. If you were muting because of the wind, don't worry about that. We're fine with that. I'd rather be able to hear you if you have some, quick response. Yeah. Jump in at any time. But so trying to get my train of thought back here. Anyways, just an interesting thought that they can organize and consolidate townships. That's the county. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more about that next week, talking about the powers of county government. But Article 7, Section 18, township government talks about that each organized township is a body corporate, which I think is maybe tied to the question we were getting on YouTube about government in general, corporation doctrine. And Article 7, Section 18 of the Michigan Constitution is talking about the constitutional offices of township government, which, for example, Michael Bosch is one of those. So by the Michigan Constitution, every township has to have a supervisor, a clerk, a treasurer, and up to 4 trustees. So those of you who know that I was a Georgetown Township Trustee when I was in Michigan, that's what I was. I was on the township board, basically like a city council member, but we didn't have a city, we have a township. So I was a township trustee. And Michael Bosch here is on the township board, but he is one of those specific offices. He is the township treasurer. And how long have you been the treasurer, Bosch?
2 years.
Oh, yeah, that's
shy of
right.
2 years.
So you were just a
And
regular.
then I was
Yeah. Okay.
a trustee from 2016 to 2020.
Okay. So for 4 years before that, you were what I was. You were a township board member. And then that's right. I should know that. I guess 2020 was a little bit much for me, so I don't remember some of those details from time to time. Okay. So that's to give you guys an example of where he fits in this process, so you can understand why he's here and why he's going to talk about some of the issues of township government, what they go over, just what some of the concerns are, or the mentality. Anyway, a couple more things I want to point out, though. The Michigan Constitution, again, this is all Article 7, because that's local government. Section 21 talks about the incorporation of cities and villages. Section 22 talks about the charters, resolutions, and ordinances of cities and villages, so municipal governments. And then again, with the Florida State Constitution, that's Article 8 on local government. Section 6D talks about ordinances. Interesting thing here in Florida, and it just kind of struck me as odd at first, but in Florida, if you have, so for example, I'm in Ormond Beach, and I'm in the city of Ormond Beach. So there's, it's a municipal government. There's local municipal ordinances and whatnot. But if I was just a little bit farther north, and it was Ormond by the Sea, that's unincorporated territory, basically. So it's not inside of a village or a city or whatnot. There's no townships here in that sense. So what is the regulating body? Well, the Florida State Constitution, Section 6D, says that it's by county ordinance that those areas are regulated. So essentially, if you're not in a city in Florida, you're in the country basically, and you're not in the city, you are, your local government is solely the county government. It's like you skipped that smaller local government level, which I just find interesting. Bosch, have you ever heard of that in other states yourself?
No, although when we drove to Cedar Point a couple weeks ago, I did notice it was, they had different listings for their township. So I'm not sure if that's, or I forget how they list. It was something unique. It didn't say, so I think there was an Ottawa. It didn't say Ottawa Township or anything. It just said, I forget what the listing was about. That's strange. I should probably research that when I get back to find out. And then of course I forgot. Plus I don't live in Ohio, so I'm not exactly sure, but not too familiar with that in other states. And
right, yeah, it just seemed really strange to me. But at any rate, I guess in that sense, it kind of, for those who think it's your local, like your village, your city, or whatever, your most local level of government, it's supposed to have all the power. Think about it in that context, because you're likely not from a state that has a setup like Florida, where in some areas there is no local or municipal government. It's just county and state government. So, all right. So last couple things I want to point out before we just let the conversation roll. So Article 8, Section 2 of the Florida Constitution talks about the establishment, how municipalities may be established. Again, it's the Michigan or the Florida Constitution that sets up how municipalities are established, what their powers are, and what their functions are. And then it also talks about annexation. So municipal annexation of unincorporated territory, merger of municipalities, etc. But at any rate, so they're not things that are just set up by, willy-nilly, set up by the local governments themselves or even by the state. Those concepts of how local governments are formed, and that they have a charter, which is basically like their local constitution. Those concepts are pretty much uniform. I have not seen a state constitution that did not set it up that way. Every state constitution that I've seen requires a charter, or sets up basically that the constitution of that municipality is in a charter, and everything flows from that. So, and of course, it's harder to change a charter than it is, the ordinances, for example. Florida takes it a step further. Article 3, which is their section on the legislature, Section 11 talks about prohibited special laws. It just lists a whole bunch of different types of laws that basically cannot be made, that are specific to different geographical areas or local government. And the Florida Constitution, Article 7 is finance and taxation. And there's a lot of provisions in there specific to local taxes, aid to local governments, local bonds, etc. So finances affecting local government. Again, just saying all those things are found in your state constitution. There are often references to, okay, so the specifics of this are going to be set out by state law, but the concepts or the authority to even have a municipal form of government, that is made or created through your state constitution. And that's why it's important for you to start with your state constitution in that context to see what kinds of municipal governments there even are. All right, let me see. Okay, I guess I'm going to try to clear up. I wish I could have Stephanie on YouTube here. If I could, it's too bad I can't hear her, and it could be a little bit more of a dialogue to make sure that we're syncing in terms of what her question is. But she was talking about applying. It looks like there was some conversation that was had between a few different people on YouTube. So I'm just kind of jumping in at the tail end of this. But I was talking about applying the restrictions placed on the federal government by the U.S. Constitution to our states as well. The Supreme Court did that. And let's see. I was trying to see another comment that she had made. So she's talking about the incorporation doctrine. It's about the claim that the Bill of Rights were incorporated into the states. It's not a doctrine. I guess let me start with that, just to kind of clear that up before we move on. So, oops, let's see here. Okay, so the 14th Amendment, this is in Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. So this is part of the U.S. Constitution. It's not some theory. It's not some doctrine. It's not some made up stuff. It's not some judge-made thing. The Supreme Court did not make this. The 14th Amendment, let's see. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. And I think maybe the most important thing is that no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of the citizens of the United States. So basically, you have the first, several chunks, I guess, of amendments, as well as pieces throughout the actual articles of the U.S. Constitution that are talking about the privileges and immunities of citizens. So, for example, the First Amendment addresses certain privileges or immunities. The Second Amendment, obviously, different yet. So there's different privileges and immunities, different rights, different things that are talked about that we hold, that are given to us by God. That as citizens of the United States, we have the right to those privileges or immunities. And the 14th Amendment says, hey, states, you can't do anything to deny or disparage these rights either. That includes what's laid out in the Bill of Rights. That includes those pieces that are laid out in the various other articles of the U.S. Constitution. So it's not a doctrine. A doctrine more so is where you have some concept that people think about. It's something that came about maybe from, case law or case precedent, but it's not actually something that's written into the language of a document like the Constitution. And this is. So hopefully that addresses that. But in the meantime, because there's a whole big conversation going back and forth. Somebody's asking, can I make a continuing education course for all politicians? I actually plan to do that. Any municipality who wants to take me up on that. In fact, I recently heard Georgetown Township likes to hire consultants, and I would be glad to be a consultant for Georgetown Township. I mean, we don't need necessarily consultants or lobbyists. That was the other word I'm looking for. Necessarily. But I mean, shoot, I guarantee you I would be putting the municipality or the people in a better position than if they were hiring, say, Arlen Meekoff for anything. Just saying. But I would be glad to do that. And I was hoping to get at least a few chuckles out of Michael Bosch here today, but it's a tough crowd, I guess.
I was gonna say we miss you when we had you for free. Well, I guess we were paying you. The taxpayers were paying you. But yeah, you came in and you cleaned us up and you got us on the right track. I definitely missed that the aspect of the thoroughness and constitutionality of where we've been off track and what we need to do to get back there. That I definitely miss. I know a little bit. I'm not a constitutional expert, but I know I've known at times throughout my serving that we've gone astray a couple times and pointed it out. Been in violation of MCL, pointed out, and I was the only one to say anything and do anything. So we miss you, and I like the idea of consulting. I think that's fantastic.
Well, hey, you can bring it up. I'm sure it'll go over really well with Schwalm and Steele and the other one of the trio. I'm sure they'll all be really excited to bring me on board to do some constitutional consulting.
I was going to clarify too, as a treasurer, I don't get any extra power. I'm still 1/7 of a vote. So a lot of times there's things where I'm like, this is just not right. And I'm just 1/7 of a vote. So, or 1/7 of a decision. So sometimes that can be frustrating. And that's part of where we're at right now. Right now we have that conservative majority. But we'll see what happens after August. Just a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but everyone on the township board is a Republican, right? In Georgetown Township?
Oh, that's an interesting one with the there's news that, well, with the censuring last week of commissioners, I think there's a buzz about maybe censuring somebody else at a township level that's a Republican. So,
but I mean,
we'll see how that pans out. That would be fantastic.
All the current township board members in Georgetown Township have run as Republicans. Is that right? They've been on the Republican primary ballot, right?
Correct.
Right. So you mentioned
Correct.
that there's like a conservative faction. Basically, I just want to point out to people that this is in West Michigan, where if you've never been to West Michigan, it's highly conservative. Most of the time, Republicans win hands down in many of the races. But we're dealing with an area. And I talked to, I was a state, MI GOP, Michigan State Committee woman for the Michigan Republican Party at the time that I moved down here. And not that long after I moved down here, I actually got to meet my state committee woman in Volusia County here. And so she and I were going to, I think the county GOP meeting, but it switches every other month. So it was quite a distance away. It was like 45 minutes away or something one way. Anyway, she and I were talking, and we got to talk about the concept of rhinos, for example. And she was like, oh yeah, it's really just those people that are rhinos that talk about rhinos, or use that term, because really that's not, it's not really a thing around here or whatever. And I said, well, in Michigan, it's vastly different. And I don't know, I don't want to speak on behalf of any other state, but the grassroots has come together in amazing ways all across the entire state of Michigan, all 83 counties. The people that are truly out there wanting freedom, fighting for freedom, voting for freedom, they're realizing, if they didn't already, they're realizing that just because you're Republican doesn't mean you're going to fight for conservative values, doesn't mean you're going to defend or support the Constitution, doesn't mean you're really going to follow the Republican platform. It means you wanted to win your race and you thought that was the best way to, get your name on the ballot. But there's the establishment or rhinos, and they're not oftentimes not actually following the Republican Party platform nor the Constitution. So anyway, even in that district, or even in that township, I should say, in one of the most conservative townships in the entire county, which Ottawa County is one of the most conservative counties in the entire state of Michigan, you still have those kinds of issues. And let me just say, when we started off our meeting, my very first meeting, it would have been November, I think, right? I think it was, it would have been November 2020. My very first meeting as a Georgetown Township Trustee. And they'd been holding them by Zoom. And I saw somebody in the comments, I think it might have been on Facebook here, somebody was commenting about that their local government was trying to force them to basically have all their meetings by Zoom and not allow the people to be present and whatnot. And I fought him tooth and nail. Like, I was ready to go with my little binder with all the topics. The very first thing, I had like this whole sheet of all the reasons why the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, the state Constitution, our state laws do not allow government bodies to meet solely by electronic methods such as Zoom. There's a requirement of having that face-to-face connection with your constituents, especially when you're in a legislative body or a legislative position. And so, I was thinking, well, shoot, if we're all supposedly in the township here, everybody that decided not to show up, and we had 4 people in the room, we could have had the meeting. I was thinking, we'll adjourn it for 15 minutes. They could get their butts in the car and they could drive over and we'll finish this meeting. But it was adjourned, I think, for 1 week or something to the next Monday. And from that point on, meetings were like 4 hours a pop because we were going to do things the right way. And if we weren't, then I was at least going to air the dirty laundry about the fact that we weren't doing things the right way, because that's what I owed to the people. And that's what we should expect from every form of government, every layer of government, every branch of government. But what are some of the issues specifically that you think people should be paying attention to at the local level, like at the township level? What are some of the things that you've been dealing with that if people really knew, if your neighbors really knew, for example, if they were paying attention, they'd be like, oh my gosh, we did what?
That's a great question. In the past few years, it hasn't been like it was. Had you asked me that, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I could have gone down a list of 100 things. But really, with the that majority getting on the board in 2020, that's kind of put an end to the kind of crazy stuff, because we have all the old stuff, like when they wanted to build a $8.1 million, this I think it was like $375 a square foot Crystal Cathedral Township building on the intersection at 200 Baldwin, right when you get off the off ramp. That was terrible. People are still upset about that. And then they purchased the Kmart property on Chicago Drive, and they were going to try to build a $22 million complex there, of course, with a new township building. The clock tower, the library, the wall when you come in. Those are all issues that people are still really upset with. But in the past 2 years, we've kind of reined that in. And we're putting an end to that the old magic, what do they call it? They list it on our capital outlay, and they'll kind of, it's a mystery line item, and it's 200,000, 400,000, 600,000. And then it's, well, what's that for? Well, we don't really know. We're putting it in there. Well, when it's, and then they come back later and go, we want to do this. We want to build a clock tower. It's going to cost $500,000. What's a terrible idea? Why do we need that? Everybody has a clock in their car and they drive past 5 banks on Baldwin with digital displays. Plus, how many people can read an old fashioned clock with arms on it? That's a whole nother issue. But they come back and say, well, it's in the budget. We've got the money for it. It's in the budget. Well, so that's what we put an end to. And actually, we, at our last budget meeting, we took away 600,000. That was, well, we don't know what it's for, but some spending somewhere. It's like, well, what does that mean? Another waterfall, another clock tower, another wall? I mean, who knows? So, and I think we've got budget meeting coming up, and and when I say we have, a conservative majority now, we have a fiscally conservative majority. There's nobody on our board that's just, have nefarious intentions. That supermajority is, I'd say, morally conservative. But when the fiscal conservative part comes in, that's where we lose some. So when the budget meeting comes up, we're just going to get back to the point where we say, we've never denied spending on necessities, things that benefit our constituents, our taxpayers. So let's not just throw, $500,000 into a department as the capital outlay. If something comes up where they need something, by all means, that's what we have finance committees for. That's what we have services for. That's what we have utilities for. So when that time arises, come to us and tell us what that is, and we'll discuss it as a committee. And if it's warranted, then it'll move to the board. But it's that whole, no, we've got too much money. So we just start dropping it in different departments and like, what's on your wish list? What do you want instead of what do we need for the township? So it'll be an interesting budget meeting, and we've got goal setting meeting coming up too. So we'll see how these pan out.
Oh, that goal setting meeting. Oh, anyway, sorry.
So I don't know if you're muted.
Oh, me? You can't hear me? Uh-oh.
I can't hear you right now.
Lori, can you hear me?
Catherine? Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you.
Let's see. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't dare hit refresh in case it gets lost.
Yeah, I'll let you back in if it doesn't work. Let me know.
I can't hear you.
When you want to? Yeah.
Nope. Still
can you hear me now?
Hear you.
Can you hear me?
I don't think he's hearing you either, Lori. Yeah.
I've got no audio. I'm not sure if it's just me or everybody.
Give me just a second.
I would say text them and tell them to refresh. You're muted, Catherine.
All right, good. So he's gonna hop off and join us back in a second. So just to clarify, I wanted him to really explain this, but he mentioned the library and things like that. It's not that Georgetown Township shouldn't have a library. Let's see if we have him back. We're maybe getting him.
Oh, here we go. I've got audio now.
Okay, good. So I was just saying, what I wanted to ask you about is for clarification on some of the issues, such as like library, how we're mentioning, library as a bad thing. It's not that having a library for the community is a bad thing, or having community types of education programs or a farmer's market or something like that. It's not that those by themselves are bad things, but what is the bad thing about the library project? if you can just kind of boil it down to what the biggest concern with that project was.
Well, that was an interesting one because I'm a library person. My dad is a huge library person. Visits, I'd say, well, Granville, Allendale, Holland, Hudsonville, Georgetown Library. Loves it. And I love libraries too, but it's not what I want. It's what the people want. So we had, constituents reached out to me and said, hey, and the whole board and said, we have a current library and it was designed and built to be doubled in size. So when they first built it, the architect said this can be doubled in size in the future if need be. And rather than looking at saying, okay, how much will this cost to do this? And do we really need it? And actually looking at the facts and say, what is the issue we're having? Is it a storage issue? Is it, we need more meeting rooms and that's what we're lacking. But it was just, oh no, we're going to build a new one. And well, what will we do? Repurpose the old building? No, we're going to tear that down, turn it into a parking lot. So we had so many residents who emailed us, contact us and said, no, I love libraries, but we're fine with what we have. We can expand on that. And I don't think this is a good idea. And what really bothered me at the time, and I was voting against 6 at pretty much every meeting back then as a trustee, was the responses that were coming from, I don't want to name names, but someone on the board that said, well, you don't understand libraries. You don't know. And it's shooing them away. But then if somebody who was part of the Friends of the Library group would say, this is the greatest thing ever, they would get a reply of, yes, I agree with you. This is the greatest thing ever. So we had the community giving us feedback. And I'd say a fair assessment was probably 65% were against it in their communication. And they were just disregarded as, nope, go. You don't understand. Go away. We don't want to hear it. And that happened, with a Kmart, and that happened with 200 Baldwin. And that's what's frustrating to me is I always get accused of being the troublemaker. And, you're always fighting against stuff and trying, asking this and asking that. And it's like, well, it's not what I want. It's what my taxpayers want, my constituents. And I talk to them. So when their voice is disregarded, it really bothers me because I was elected to do this. It's not about me. It's about being the voice of my voters. So we still see that going on. And good part is we have a survey going out right now. It came in people's tax bills where we're trying to get some input from people. And that's a whole nother process. And Kirsten is the one that once she got appointed to services committee, that was her idea. She's very big into analytics and getting feedback and talking with the constituents. And she said, let's do a survey. And I said, this is good because now we have somebody who's going to stand up and ask for a true survey because we've done them in the past. And it was always like, we're going to spend your money. We're going to spend on A, B, or C. Which one do you want? And there's never a D, don't spend my money.
Right.
So now we're to a point, we've actually got a survey. And I think it is very difficult to have one that's neutral and not say leaning one way or another, like we're going to keep spending or we're stop spending. So, but there are spaces for people to give feedback. And I tell people I've been knocking doors for Kirsten and I'm talking to people and they're like, they only give me a little bit of space. I'm like, you can attach as many sheets of paper as you want. We want your feedback. That's what we're here for. We are your representatives. So as far as libraries go, it's done now. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a $12 million library. It's fantastic. The numbers, I wish they were higher. And, one trustee who constantly slandered me during campaign time. Oh, Michael Bosch hates libraries. No, I don't. They're fantastic. I just don't think we need a $12 million one. And now that it is built, we need to actually get people in using it because it's done. So we're not fighting about whether it's a good or bad thing, the spending. It's built. Now let's get the people in. Let's use it. Right,
exactly. As far as that comment, I can't help that though. If the next time that particular person on the board says that, Michael Bosch hates libraries, you should say, well, at least I know how to read the Constitution, which you might want to try sometime. Anyway, so basically at your municipal government level, there's a lot of local finance things that you need to be paying attention to. In Georgetown Township, that was one of the bigger things. But there's also what we saw with COVID are as soon as October 2nd, 2020 happened, when the Michigan Supreme Court said, oh, yeah, those executive orders that the governor wrote, well, they're null and void because she didn't follow one state law and the other state law is totally unconstitutional. So the orders went out the window. Of course, I knew that was coming. I knew that the governor was going to really ramp up her use of the public health code to continue to do the same restrictions. And she did. And there were directives basically from the state health departments down to the local health departments. Hey, you guys got to be using MCL 333.2. I think 2453 might be the local health departments, and 2253 was the state health departments. One I might have them mixed up, but anyway, two different statutes that do the same thing, one at the state level and one at the local level. And so what did we see in October 2020? We saw local governments, county and township, and you name it, that were coming up with all of these mask policies and social distancing requirements. And you can't even have, there were capacity limitations. Oh, you can only have 25% of your normal capacity if you're this kind of business or that kind of business. Or, if you're a school, you can't do this sport as an organized sport, but you could do that. Or, and those are issues that, didn't come up as much, didn't make the news as much, if you want to say it that way, in West Michigan, or specifically in Georgetown Township, but they were definitely issues and concerns in the city of Lansing, in Oakland County, in the city of Detroit, and the city of Grand Rapids, in a lot of different communities that are at the local level, either county or city level. And we saw a lot of that. And don't forget, your local school board is also a level of local government as well.
Yep.
So there's just all kinds of different aspects there. And no matter what, the reason why I went through all of that stuff at the beginning on the Constitution and from the state constitutions and the U.S. Constitution, et cetera, is to remind you that every single government body, every single government agency, every single government official, every single government regulation has to comply with the restrictions placed by all those constitutional provisions.
Yep.
So you can't have a municipality that, requires masks, because no government can require that anywhere in the U.S.
Yep.
So I don't know, Bosch, can you think of any other? I want to give people, some of those real world examples. We talked about, some good finance examples. I mentioned, the concept of having meetings in person, which I fought from day one. Luckily, we won, but can you think of anything else? I mean, we weren't, for example, as soon as that happened, we were not requiring people to wear masks when they came into the meetings. We weren't requiring that they had to sit, 6 feet apart from every other human being. We didn't have the right to do that. But, and I think they knew they wanted to pick some of their battles with me, because I was going to fight tooth and nail, and every single one of meetings would be 10 hours long. So we shouldn't have to pick and choose which of our rights we get to keep in any given governmental setting or any given public setting.
Yeah,
we get to keep them all.
That was fantastic when you came in, because no, we are going to have in-person meetings. And I think we were one of the only townships in Michigan that did that. And that's what you have to do. There has to be somebody that stands up and says, no, this is not right. This is, we're going to meet in person. We're going to have meetings. And I mean, we were getting emails and letters from the Ottawa County Health Department. They were always vague. They were never really threatening. And I always responded with, well, by all means, show up with the, sheriff or state police if you need to. Come on. And apparently it got forwarded to Nestle's office, but nothing ever happened. So, I mean, they'll try anything they can to scare people into obeying them. So,
Well, and actually, I think there was at least one other local government. I think it was a township board that was meeting in person somewhere. I want to say around Traverse City. You said state police. I think the state police actually did go into that board meeting up there during one of the meetings and was threatening the board members with arrest if they didn't leave the meeting because they were holding it in person, and they claimed it was against the law when in reality it was only violating the orders, which are not
Executive orders. Yep.
So I started having bodyguards. I had militia that were attending the meetings on my behalf, because if any state police or any law enforcement official thought they were going to put their hands on me because I was physically in a building as a member of the local governing body, that wasn't going to fly. So I was particularly concerned for my rights and my physical safety and well-being, given what happened to me on November 3rd, 2020 in Allegan County. Anyway, there's a lot of things, that you really need to be paying attention to. And it's really not as hard as you might think it would be. So I find it helpful if you have a small group, like say your small church group, or say your group of neighbors, try to break it up and like have this little, this group of people, maybe just members of your family, that, this neighbor will, if you're talking about your neighborhood, maybe this neighbor goes to your city council meetings or your township board meetings. Maybe that neighbor keeps an eye on what's happening at the county commission or county council, as it might be called, their meetings. Somebody else tries to keep their eye more on, the school board. Somebody else is keeping their eye on, some of the other, in Michigan, there's a county road commission. There's oh goodness, I lost all my acronyms all at the same time, but there's all kinds of different agencies or elected officials or whatnot. So, there's a lot to keep your eye on, but if you work with others who share your same concerns, that's going to be the best way to kind of split it up and figure out what's going on. I was on the township board, and I couldn't go to all the meetings. Now, Michael Bosch would sit there and go to like all the meetings, even if he wasn't on a particular committee.
Do it.
That's great.
I get it. When it was campaign time, I got accused of he is abusing taxpayer money by going to meetings that he's not even on the committee. And I'm like, you do realize I don't get paid for that, right? I don't get paid. I go there because I want to see what's happening, kind of get a vibe of that room and what are board members thinking, and because it's coming to the board eventually. So I'm at those. So, and that's that whole thing is the participation. And a lot of the reason I go is we just don't have our constituents just don't go to them. And I always encourage people as I talk to them, and they're like, I wish the board didn't do this. Or I wish they would do this. And I'm like, come to a meeting. We'd love to, get your input. And probably 90% of the time they say, I tried that. They ignore me. They don't listen to me. They just shoo me away and they disregard me. And that's understandable when people are going to take time from their busy schedules to come to a meeting and then get disrespected. We've had it in the past, old board, where we had one board member who was cutting off residents during their 3-minute speaking time. And I actually commented on it. I said, that's unacceptable. They have a First Amendment right. They've got their 3 minutes. You might not agree with what they're saying, but you can't interrupt them. And it's that kind of behavior that prohibits, discourages people from coming to our meetings, and we want them there. So definitely involvement. We want people coming to meetings and transparency. I know that was a big thing that as soon as you got in, you were pushing for transparency. I'm still trying to fight that battle. I want not just the board meeting recorded on video. I want every meeting, finance, services, utilities, election, every planning commission, zoning, every single committee needs to be recorded and accessible to the public. And it's always surprising how many residents, even though we don't have video for those, they read the minutes, which, we can't keep track how many people read the minutes, but I talked to a number of people just in the last week that they were talking about stuff. How'd you know about this? And they're like, I read the meeting minutes. I'm like, wow. I read them. I'm at the meeting, but I still read like planning commission. Sometimes I hit a few of those maybe one a month. But I still read through the meeting minutes because it's in communications on our agenda. But for residents to take the time to do that, that's what we want. We want to get that information to them. We want the transparency, because one of the things governments do, and I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of township cities and villages will have what's called at the bottom of an agenda, other business or general discussion. And typically, because it's not an agenda item, no meeting minutes are taken on that. And that's usually the back door to discuss items that you don't want on an agenda and you don't want minutes on. And I'm a transparent, like you're a transparency person, is be honest. I mean, if you don't want something recorded in the minutes or on video, then you probably shouldn't be talking about it. So it's that whole, I've been pushing for it, and mysteriously our video recorder, microphone transceiver stopped working 3 months ago, 3.5 months ago now. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy.
Wow.
So, and it's a $5,000 unit. And so I'm like, what's status report? Where's this at? We had to send it off to Yamaha to get repaired. And I'm like, oh boy, it's going to be, I mean, it's an expensive unit. It's going to be $1,500. So I take a look on eBay. We find one that is mint, like brand new in the box, for $85. So
wow.
I go and I hook it up. I'm not getting paid to hook it up. And so I hook it up and let's test it. Well, nobody here knows how to turn it on. What? Oh, our old superintendent did, and our assistant to the manager does, but he's on vacation. I'm like, this is transparency. We should have at least, I don't know, 5 people. And I will go through training for free to learn how to do this, because this is how we communicate with our residents. And so at finance yesterday, I said, what's the status now? Well, actually, we got the old one back, and they couldn't find anything wrong with it. Well, that's strange. That's really strange. And I said, well, we bought the one, so we're good now. And did you test it? Yeah, that seems to be working. We're having recording issues now with the software. Oh, so a different problem pops up. And I said, well, it's a $5,000 unit. It's old tech, but if we can buy them on eBay for, 50 to 75 bucks, should we buy another one for a backup? Because we have 2 of them in the rack. One of them went bad. And our assistant to the manager says, no, we have a backup. We got the one returned from Yamaha. Wait a minute, it was broken. They said that you said it was broken. They said there's nothing wrong with it. So it comes back and it wasn't working. So it's broken. So that's not a backup if it's broken.
Right.
So it's that whole thing is you start to question is this conspiracy theory stuff that they're just maybe not wanting to record videos? I don't know. It's all the little pieces start to add up and it makes you question it. But I am 100% for transparency. And I think every township, city, or village should be doing the same thing. Is where's transparency and honesty? You be honest with the people. Don't use propaganda to try to push something, whether it be a $22 million mega complex in a township or whatever. Just if it's a true need, go to the public. They understand, and you explain it to them, the reason behind it, instead of, well, it's just what we've always done. It's just what we've always done. It's my biggest pet peeve.
Right.
Well, how about we look for some efficiency? Well, no, things are going good. And it's just what we've always done. Why is this budget? What does every budget get a 5 to 10% bump every year? And what's the reasoning behind it? Well, it's just what we've always done. Maybe we shouldn't do that.
Right.
Maybe that's how we end up with a pile of millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then panic when people are like, why do you have so much money? And then we better spend it. What could we build? What's the newest, greatest thing that we could spend our taxpayers' money on without their input, of course?
So, you said something that really stuck out to me. And then I saw some really great comments in the comment section, and then my brain just kind of petered out there, I guess. But anyway, transparency is definitely something that needs to happen. And the interesting thing is that, and I don't remember where you stood on the issue, Mike, but there were two board members that were really adamantly fighting for having, like Zoom or whatnot, or YouTube, having live participation at meetings by video. And it's from 2 different perspectives. It was me and it was Becky Steele. And she brought up, for example, the elderly who are With COVID restrictions being lifted, you still had some people that were immunocompromised or elderly, and they, didn't or couldn't want to, they couldn't go out into public and whatnot because whatever, they were at risk, a higher risk than others for all kinds of things, including COVID. And so, but they still wanted to participate. They still wanted to have that chance to participate as things are happening and not just send an email to their board members or something. And so, and I agreed. I think that we should do everything we can to increase transparency. So having people participate in person is a must. It's a requirement. You can't force people to stay out of your government meetings. That's the opposite of acknowledging that we, the people, have all the power and authority here. But at the same time, we have, look at where we're at with technology, and look at what COVID did with all the shutting down of everything. People learn to use Zoom or learn to use, StreamYard or other video accessing types of software and other technology in ways that they never really, whole segments of people never really would have touched that technology. And now they do. Now they know how to use it, at least minimally. So I think it's important that we integrate both kinds of concepts at all levels of government, but certainly at the local levels of government, at your township meetings, at your committee meetings. And that's what it was going to talk about too, is so you were talking about, finance and services and all that. And I just want to break that down for people that in Georgetown Township, there is your elected body that has 7 voting members. Then there are, I don't remember how many, but there's several different committees that are standing committees. Some meet more frequently than others, but their job is to really flesh out different ideas and different concerns and things on those specific topics assigned to them, so that a lot of the legwork on a particular project can be done at the committee level, so that by the time it makes it to the full board, there's still a full discussion and there's still a full vote, but a lot of that legwork, a lot of that, the time involved in fleshing those ideas out, that part's out of the way. And now you're just getting down to the details, right? Down to the guts of the project to vote yes or no, or to, at least narrow it down to different reasonable choices or something. So there's those kinds of committees where it's the board members. It's 3 board members on each of those committees. Never more than 3, because if you have more than 3, then you have a majority. And if you have a majority, then it's considered a full meeting it's considered a quorum of the township board. But what you also have are separate and distinct boards, such as the Planning Commission, the Downtown Development Authority. There's a Zoning Board of Appeals, and most states will have these exact same boards. Maybe they're called something different. Bosch, can you think of any other boards that you're not just particular to Georgetown Township, but
Yeah, some cities will have like an EDC or a what is it called? Downtown Development, DDB, or I'm not sure how they what their abbreviations are, but they'll have some of those kind of committees where it's not necessarily a board member, but residents, or it could be a representative from a board. One board member there is the board representative, but a lot of residents from the community. In fact, we had that with WCET. I was a board representative on WCET public. It was a public TV station. I'm trying to think of what other boards would be out there.
And just to let people know, so like Planning Commission is literally going to with the planning of your community and what kinds of ordinances in general that you're looking to have. When your master plan for your community is supposed to be, at least in Michigan, there's statutes that it's supposed to be generated through your planning commission and then making its way to your city council or your township board. I served on the planning commission and the Downtown Development Authority, both of those bodies at the local government level when we were living in Belding, Michigan. And those are volunteer positions, and they're not elected, they're appointed. it was, often say a monthly meeting or sometimes a quarterly meeting. In bigger communities, it might be a weekly meeting. But those are important to go to, because when you're talking about what kinds of programming you're going to have in your city, what are your tax dollars being spent on? What kinds of regulations? Are you putting into place regulations on swimming pools, or restrictions on parking on certain days or on certain streets, or having different kinds of events, or what kinds of permits should be required for different events, things like that. Those are all things that often start at those those small bodies, those subcommittees, or those local commissions, and then they usually make their way then to, say, the county, the township board or the city council or something like that. But anyway, when Mike Bosch here was talking about some of those other bodies, the main ones that he was referencing were the ones that are basically just subcommittees of the board. There's not residents are not voting members of those subcommittees, but on a planning commission, a downtown development authority, a zoning board of appeals, those are made up of people who live in the community, who are willing to volunteer their time in that regard. So anyway, I have some great challenges. I have a way to get involved, a Wednesday way to get involved challenge every week. This week is an 8-step one. That's not really complicated, but I'm hoping everybody will do it. And if they do it, and I know a lot of people, just because of where I was when I started doing these videos and started getting on social media more, I was in West Michigan. I was in Georgetown Township. So I know a lot of people that still follow what I'm doing are in fact from that area. So Michael Bosch, you will probably get some emails, phone calls, or more people showing up to meetings in the next couple weeks here, because that is all related to what the Way to Get Involved challenge of the week is, which I'll talk about with people tomorrow. So are there any I was just looking, let's see. Where does Georgetown Township broadcast its meetings? The question also, let me just put it on there. It's asking, is it on Facebook, YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Clout Hub? I think it's just YouTube.
Yep, YouTube, and then there's a link right off our township website page under the meeting minutes, meetings. So if you go to each meeting, there'll be a little checkbox that has video, or a little TV icon. The ones that have been recorded. And there was a interesting history in the past, back in 2014 through 2020, where controversial meetings, there was technical difficulties. So there's a good amount of videos out there, but definitely the participation. Come to the meetings, watch the videos to get the background, and then also, and not just come to meetings, you can contact us too via email. Get a hold of the entire board or individual board members. Reach out to us at any time. You don't even have to wait for a meeting, but definitely get engaged, come to meetings. And especially like planning commissions, a really important one that a lot of people only go to if they're looking for something specific, but they've got an issue they want. But that's an important one because with our master plan, we're required by state law to revisit it every 5 years. So, and I always say, just because we have to revisit it doesn't mean we need to go and start changing things or adding things, because I have a big issue with just creating new laws and regulations just because. Well, why not? It might solve a problem that might come up. So that's an important one to go to, Plan Commission, just to see what's happening, because I'm a big property rights guy, and I just don't like it when they start getting incredibly restrictive on what you can and can't do. And it's, I mean, I understand you have to have laws so your neighbor doesn't build a 6-story building right next to you and, have a junkyard, or start a farmer's market, that kind of thing. But
depends on where you live and what those reasonable expectations are, right? So
Yep. And that's why there's that community involvement too, because your planning commission, which is coming up with these ordinances, is made up of community members and getting feedback from the public. So if you as a whole community township village. I'm not sure how cities work with that, but you all get together and everybody agrees, hey, you know what? We want to relax our regulations. We want people to be able to have 30 chickens in their backyard in a low density residential area. And your planning commission is the one that makes those ordinances. So, and then you all kind of agree to it. Like as a community, we say this is okay now. Like beekeeping is a big one. We get that a lot. A lot of people want to do beekeeping. I'm not sure if it's practice the hobby of beekeeping or what the correct term is, but honeybees. They want honeybees, and there's a lot of I guess false information about honeybees attack people and all that. So we always get a little bit of kickback, a little fight on that one. But it's currently not allowed in Georgetown, and I think it's one of those things that let's look at it and let's do a little fact finding and find maybe that's something we should be doing here. There's a lot of benefits to it, but just the flexibility, and it's community driven. So come to those meetings, contact your planning commission members, your board members, and give them your input. Let them know.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank all of you who were joining us today. I was just trying to scroll through the comments here. My screen is not doing it very, whatever. It's not doing it very gracefully. That's not really the word I'm looking for, but it's jumping around, so I can't tell if I'm actually seeing all the comments. I do see somebody was saying they'd like to see me and Douglas Gibbs talk about the Constitution. Let's see. Yes. So I was going to say, I think that's who Lori would have to tell me for sure. But Lori, isn't that who I've been on Alan's show with, that we have had at least a couple times? Okay.
Yeah, I'll push more to see if we can get you on his show too. And then maybe, sometime down the road we can bring him on as well, because I think it's good. He's not an attorney, yet he's been focused on teaching people the Constitution and does seem to have a good understanding of it and not a fluffed up one, I guess you would say.
He has a decent understanding of the Constitution. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had some things hashed out on Alan's show on a few episodes, but anyway, yeah. I guess that the way you said that, though, your wording on that, Lori, it's important, Michael Bosch is talking about, come to your meetings, come to local government meetings, email, call, whatever, reach out to your representatives at all levels. And at least every so often. I mean, if you find it overwhelming, then, maybe every other year, your odd years, you're paying attention to state level issues, and your even years, you're paying attention to local level issues. I mean, there's ways to do it so that you can still be paying attention and involved and not overwhelmed, but, be effective with your time. But no matter what, no law should be written in a way that you can't understand it. No constitution should be written in a way that you can't understand it. You don't need an attorney to explain something about the Constitution to you in order for you to get it. I explain it because we've been brainwashed the other way around, and haven't really been taught it in school, and not even in law school, and even though we stand up there, right, Bosch, we stand up there and we take our oath of office and all that, and we do a ceremony for that. It's not like we talked about what the Constitution was. I think Dan might have been the one that swore us in, or was it Justin Roebuck? Anyways, yeah, that jerk. Anyway, he doesn't know anything about the Constitution either. But that's the Ottawa County clerk. No, that's not right. Yeah.
Yep. County clerk.
Okay, county clerk. But anyway, so he came over and did the swearing in when I had been first elected to Georgetown Township. But anyway, it's not like there was a question and answer session, or like, hey, final quiz time. Okay, so is government allowed to do whatever it wants to, true or false? Or what kind of form of government do we have? A democracy, a constitutional republic, a communist society? Pick one of the. We didn't have anything like that, and honestly, you should have to pass some sort of a minimal understanding test in order to serve in government. And it doesn't matter if you're a teacher, doctor, lawyer, trash collector, stay-at-home mom, librarian, whatever. But at any rate, just keep that in mind, that it doesn't take a government official or an attorney or a court to tell you what your rights are, to tell you what the Constitution says, or to tell you what the law says. Those things are all something that must be readily accessible to the people and understandable by the people. So don't let any of that intimidate you. Anyway, so we could talk about this forever, but it is sunny outside in both states. I mean, it's a miracle, right? That it's sunny in Florida and in Michigan at the same time right now. So I have to get outside because I'm solar powered, as my husband says. And I did promise you all that my own Mike Henry, was going to be on the episodes with us, at least for the first little bit during his lunch hour. But yesterday was his first day back in 2 weeks after, we had to go all the way up to Michigan and deal with that Allegan County fun stuff. But if you want to know the specifics about where we're going to go from there on that case, or what cases I will be working on, the last 2 newsletters I think I've sent out, weekly newsletters, have talked about that. And make sure to sign up for our weekly newsletters so you can continue to get information like that and updates about different things. I put links to different resources in there, links to the videos for the week, etc. So, Michael Bosch, if there's ever anything that you think would be helpful, just a resource or a particular event or anything you think that people need to know, a link or something, please shoot it on over, and I'll make sure to put it probably as a post on our social media, but also on the website and in the newsletter. You are uniquely positioned to be able to know what's going on at a few different avenues, basically, of local politics and local government. So anyway, if you come across something that you'd like the people in general to know about, let me know. Because like I said, even though I focus on Michigan and Florida, and we do have a lot of people all over the country, and even people in other countries that watch what we do and follow the work that we do, they at the very least need to see the kinds of examples of things that they could be looking for as well. So
Yep, I wanted to make a point too about when you talk about it, getting involved in engagement. Interesting. People are stepping up too to get involved. We've got 17 precincts here in Georgetown, and I believe all but 1 or 2 have overruns. So like my precinct 3, we have 9 people running for 5 seats, and we're seeing that across the whole township. So
for precinct delegate.
Precinct delegates. Yep. So people want to get involved, and they're getting involved. So we just need to do some of that at the township level too, have them come to meetings. And I think the key is once they hear, like when you were on the board, people were excited. They're coming to meetings because they're like, all right, things are going to get done now. We've got a new board coming in. They're going to listen to us. They're going to, finally they're going to listen to us. And we were on track with that. It's still going good. You left some big shoes to be filled. And I said all the time, like, boy, I miss Catherine. Catherine would know. We appointed Kirsten, and she's been doing a phenomenal job. I like her better than I like myself. I'm a troublemaker on the board, but so it's we're still working towards it, and that's what we want is people to know that when you give us the input, we're not just going to disregard it, throw it away. We're going to listen to you.
And it's about
we work for you.
Yeah, and it's about listening. So I remember one of the points I made. I don't remember. I think his name was Nick.
Oh yeah. He hasn't been back for a while, but
a wonderful guy named Nick, who's not even from Georgetown Township, would come to our meetings and express his opinion on issues without being fully informed, oftentimes. But nevertheless, if he had an opinion, and it got to a point where it was basically personal attacks against me, and allegations against me. But when it comes to, for example, he there was a Memorial Day parade in 2021, and that Georgetown Township, it was in Georgetown Township, and the original people that put it on, the original organization, was not able to do that because of liability, whatever. Basically stuff related to COVID. A different new local organization stepped up and said, hey, we want to put it on in this short amount of time we have left. And there were 4 of us that voted in favor of that. But there were 3 that were adamantly like against it, like, oh, you can't do this. And then there were people that were a few vocal community members that emailed us board members afterwards saying, how dare you make it political? You had, you allowed Michigan for Vaccine Choice to be in the parade, or you allowed whatever other organizations, to be in the parade. And it should be about Memorial Day and those who, we lost and that kind of thing. And the thing is, the wonderful concept behind the First Amendment is that even if you don't agree with the other viewpoints being expressed, they still have every right to be there, being respectfully shared, just the same as you would respectfully share your opinions. And what I shared at one of the meetings is that, I didn't like what that Nick guy was coming to the meetings and saying about me or spreading on social media. A lot of it was not quite true, or just not appropriate. Yeah, and getting to the point of basically being illegal, but to come to the meetings though and share that he had concerns or whatnot, that's a right that he has. That's a right that every citizen has, and that's regardless of whether I like the viewpoint or not. So I explained I'm not a big fan of the whole LGBTQ, initiatives and everything like that. But if there was an organization that wanted to have an LGBTQ parade float, kid appropriate in the parade, they would have every right to be there, just the same as the Michigan for Vaccine Choice group, because it's all about having those different voices be heard. That's what makes our society function the way that it's supposed to. So anyway, but it was great to have all of you commenting in the comments today on Facebook and YouTube, and eventually someday Rumble and some of those other, Twitter or whatever, we'll be able to hopefully pull comments and see comments live from there as well. But also great to have Michael Bosch, and apparently our names, that is so weird. Our names went away. I did not turn that off. So I'm not sure what happened there. But anyway, so I'm constitutional attorney Catherine Henry, and this has been our wonderful guest today, Michael Bosch, the Georgetown Township treasurer, which is in West Michigan. And it's been a pleasure. Of course, he does get the blame for me being on the Georgetown Township board. The same as Maya Hahn gets the blame for me being on Michigan State Committee, because I was a part of each of their slates and did not think I would win in a million years. And voila. So anyway.
Top vote getter.
Top vote getter, yes. Yeah. So anyway, we hope to have you back sometime soon. Well, there's always good government issues to talk about. But thank you.
I appreciate you having me. And I'm not a constitutional expert. I can only throw out the few times where I knew things, but this is definitely unconstitutional. We can't do this. Well, one of them, our ordinance said you can't have firearms in our parks or cemeteries. Like you can't do that. That's unconstitutional. And actually that vote passed unanimously back in 2016. So think about the board makeup back then. So I guess the fear of being sued brings people to their senses. You'll just say that.
Right.
I wanted to add something. You say, well, I'm not an expert on the Constitution, but your goal is to follow it. So you are the example that somebody that wasn't trained or educated in that is able to, do your own due diligence to make sure that it's being followed. And that's really important. You're just an average person like everybody else that is pushing to do the right thing and follow it. So I think that's good. I don't think you have to be an expert. I think you just have to want to do the right thing.
Yep. And that's the thing, is be willing to learn more and take little bites, because it is overwhelming when you think about it. I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, you got Michigan Constitution. Like, I think the only probably MCL I can list as I think 141. What was it 455? And I remember that one because that's when our board voted to use our budget stabilization fund to fund a library, and it specifically states budget stabilization funds can't be used for capital outlay or new construction. I'm like, we're in violation. I'm like, when did the police come and arrest you guys? Never happened. They didn't care. So that's the only one I could name. But yep, it's just it's looking at it, and it's best when it's something that applies, because then it means a lot more rather than just reading through. And when you can find something that you're focused on and then find the law that backs it up, then it's you'll remember it more. So, but never stop learning. We've got a lot to learn. So,
Right.
but the key is work for the people, listen to the people. So,
Exactly. Too bad the rest of our politicians don't know that yet, but we're not done with them yet, are we?
Nope,
We have a
nope.
lot to go. So, all right. Well, thank you, everybody for joining us today, and we'll see you tomorrow, hopefully at noon, for the way to get involved segment. And just give me some grace. I have my son here spending some time with me finally this week. So, but hopefully we'll get back to normal schedule at noon every day for each segment, and lots of good things. The Constitution segment recap will be on Thursday, of course. Friday is our freedom fighting tools. Saturday, the highlight for the Restore Freedom Goodie of the Week, and Sunday is biblical insight for the topic that we've been covering. So I look forward to seeing you for all those segments. And of course, next Tuesday at noon on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, maybe Twitter, and some of our other social media platforms for our next full episode of Restore Freedom Weekly, where we're going to have a guest on for the discussion of county governments. And so we'll have a wonderful guest who I've also known for a few years now, Joe Moss, running for Ottawa County Commission, and also the leader of Ottawa Impact and Michigan Impact. So thank you, everyone, and I hope you all have a wonderful, sunshining day.